Hello and welcome to AWS Certified Solution Architect course. In this video, we will discuss about Identity and Access Management service of AWS. AWS Identity and Access Management is a web service that enables AWS customers to manage users and user permission in AWS. The service is targeted at organizations with multiple users or systems in the cloud that use AWS products such as Amazon EC2, Amazon SimpleDB, and the AWS Management Console. With IAM, you can centrally manage users' security credentials such as access keys and permissions that control which AWS resources user can access. So it's a web service that helps you securely control access to AWS resources. The first thing that comes to access control is authentication. So when a user is authenticated by using his credentials, he has he has been assigned some policies which allow him to access few resources. So this process will be known as authorization. Now let's discuss some features of identity and access management. The first feature is shared access to your AWS account. You can grant other people permission to administrator and use resources in your AWS account without having to share your password or access key. We can understand this by a real-time scenario. Suppose you have a root account in AWS and you don't want to share that with any user because of security breach. So you can create a user with administrator account and give him the access to manage your account. So in that case, you are able to delegate permission to other users without sharing your root key. Now the second feature is granular permissions. Granular permissions simply means you can restrict access for users to particular resources. Suppose there is a situation in which you want to give access to a particular service in AWS. So you can create a policy and attach it to the user so that he will be able to access only the service that you want him to access. For example, here we have EC2, Simple Storage Service, DynamoDB, Redshift, and other AWS services. And you want some user to access only S3 buckets. So you will create a policy for that user so that he will be able to access only S3 buckets. Similarly, if you want to restrict some user to have only read-only access, then also you can attach a read-only policy to that user and he will be having the same access. Now the next feature is secure access to AWS resources for applications that run on Amazon EC2. In some cases, you want your one resource to be able to perform some task on another resource. So in that case, we cannot hard code the credentials within the source resource. This may be because of security breach or the credential may change with time or you need to change the credentials. So it will be very difficult to manage that. So in that case, we have a feature called IAM role that we can attach to the source resource and that role which will provide the access and authorization to that source resource so that he can make any changes and he can perform any task on other resources of AWS. Now the next feature is identity federation. Instead of creating users, groups, roles in AWS itself, we can use some external identity sources for AWS access. The external identity source can either be Active Directory, Facebook, or any other identity source. So we can use the federation service to use the AD credentials, AD accounts to provide access to AWS. In this AD example, we have to take consideration of ADFS service, that is Active Directory Federation service, and using that we can federate the Active Directory credentials to AWS for access. The next feature is identity information for assurance. Suppose there are many users who are using multiple resources and the logs are generated and saved in CloudTrail. So to identify who made what changes, you need some identity information. And by using that information, you can do an audit of your AWS environment. So this is another benefit of IAM. Since AWS involves some payment options and the payments need to be made from time to time for the users of resources, so there should be some PCI DSS compliance, and IAM supports the processing, storage, and transmission of credit card data by a merchant or service provider. And this has been validated as being compliant with PCI DSS. The next feature is IAM is integrated with many AWS services. So if you want to access any service in AWS, you should be granted permission through IAM. And the last feature here is free to use. The identity and access management is a feature that is free to use and you will not be charged a single penny for it. However, you will be charged only for use of other AWS resources by your IAM users. Now let's discuss the high-level entities of IAM. The first entity is user. User can be any end user who is willing to access AWS resources. The second entity is group. Group can be viewed as collection of users under one set of permission. For example, in your company, there may be different teams. Maybe there will be a developer team, there will be a support team, there will be an admin team, and there will be some other team which will take care of finance and all. So what you can do is you can create a collection of those users and add them to a particular group depending on their team. After that, you can create a policy which will provide access to the resources they are concerned with. For example, for admins, you may have to give full access to all the resources. So you can use AWS admin policy and attach it to administrators group. On the other hand, for finance people, you need to create a policy that has access to finance related services in AWS, like billing and bill consolidation. So in this way, you can create a policy and attach it to groups for their access. Now the third entity is roles. Roles are similar to group, but the good thing with roles is it can be assigned to users as well as resources. So now you must be thinking how we can assign a role to resources and what purpose it will fulfill. So suppose a scenario where your EC2 instances, your Windows server want to access some database or some other services in AWS. So to provide that access, either we can hard code the credential within the server, or we can assign a role to it with the same permission. So the benefit with role will be you need not to manage the password. It is just a temporary role that will be invoked every time the EC2 instance will try to access the database. So it's a bit easy to manage, and far more easy to implement than a credential. Thank you for now. In the next video, we will discuss further topics of identity and access management.